Okay, we're back talking about the end of Game of Thrones. I know this came out like 2.5 years ago, but stick with me. I think I have something interesting to say about it. Now, the end of Game of Thrones was bad. I know it was bad. You know it was bad. The cast knows it was bad.
And are you happy with how things ended?
Yeah.
She didn't say yes. You didn't say yes.
Best season ever!
It's the best. It's the best season ever.
And I would also argue that everything past season 4 was drivel, but there is something exceptionally terrible about season 8 and something even more egregiously bad about that finale. And time has not improved it. On rewatch, the dialogue still makes frustratingly little sense, the characters act completely illogically, and some stuff just comes out of nowhere. And still, I get this sense that there was some sort of higher thematic message in it. Something that we're missing. Now, I know, the showrunners are idiots. These are guys who made Dany symbolically a demon and Jesus in the same episode. I mean, it was this episode, by the way. And I shit you not, in an interview, David Benioff once said, "Themes are for 8th grade book reports," which is sort of like a composer saying that melodies are for middle school marching bands. So if I'm not detecting anything from them, perhaps I'm detecting the remnants of some thematic message that was intended by George R.R. Martin and was communicated to the showrunners. I don't know, maybe I'm imagining things. It's just that, well, in the episode, people talk a hell of a lot about choice and decision making.
I chose my fate.
Yes, you left her no choice. Must it matter what I do? That's her decision.
Please.
She doesn't get to choose.
But you do, and you have to choose now.
They don't get to choose.
It's not for you to decide.
But it's not for you to decide.
This fate is for our king to decide. Choose one.
Make your choice then.
The decision about what's best for everyone should be left to everyone.
Can't think of a worse choice. If we choose you, will you wear the crown?
Choose Sir Davos. Choose anyone else.
I choose you.
You choose me?
So if this episode is about anything, it's about choice. The ability to decide one path over another. What one might call free will. And there are 3 scenes that deal with choice. There's 1, when Jon goes to see Tyrion and Tyrion tries to convince Jon to kill Dany. 2, when Jon goes to see Dany and kills her. And 3, the Great Council scene. So let's start with the scene between Jon and Tyrion. Now, this is a tough scene to watch as the dialogue jumps from one topic to the next, rather illogically. However, if you outline what they talk about, it starts making a little more sense. It's more that the scene is out of order. So the dialogue begins with Tyrion saying that he's done many bad things in his life and it would be justice for him to die. But then he stops and asks Jon if there's an afterlife.
So is there life after death?
Not that I've seen.
And this is rather important. There is no heaven and hell. There is no divine justice. In fact, there's no God. At least, thematically, there's no God. Let's remember that the old gods, the children of the forest and the three-eyed raven, were destroyed and the Sept of Baelor was blown up. Melisandre died and Jon Snow turned out not to be Neo. Also, I think Aeron died off-screen. Even if you think Arya is somehow Jesus, it doesn't matter, she sails off the end of the earth. But really, if you're looking for some 8th grade book report symbolism, it's the Sept blowing up. The point being, there is no God in the world of Game of Thrones, but if there is no God, where does morality come from? This is an important question as it's central to why Jon kills Dany.
How do you know it'll be good?
Now the answer to where does morality come from without God is of course from people, but different people care about different things and have different opinions on what's right.
What about everyone else? All the other people who think they know what's good.
And so if we look at Tyrion's conversation with Jon, the conversation boils down to Tyrion and Jon meandering through human-derived moral philosophy, and Tyrion throwing shit at a wall and hoping something sticks. He tries all sorts of moral angles to get Jon to kill Dany. The first angle that Tyrion tries is to declare Dany simply genetically evil.
Our queen's nature is fire and blood.
But Jon rejects this angle as he's Targaryen as well.
You think our house words are stamped on our bodies when we're born, and that's who we are? Then I'd be fire and blood too.
So this is notable as there is no God, so God is not defining a person's essence, and genetics does not define a person's essence either. One's essence is based on one's choices and one's actions. And we see this with a rather illogical dialogue transition where Tyrion compares the essence of Dany to his father and sister, claiming that based on their choices and the results, Dany is the worst character of them all.
Pile up all the bodies of all the people they ever killed. There still won't be half as many as our beautiful queen slaughtered in a single day.
And here we have some very important elements of the philosophical belief of existentialism, the idea that humans determine their own essence, morality, and destiny through their free will. Now Jon rejects this, saying that we have to consider circumstances, and Tyrion then asks Jon if he would do the same in the same situation, and Jon doesn't know. And then we get this rather important line.
Must it matter what I do?
It matters more than anything.
Now, we should note that if morality were to come from an external source or a higher authority, such as a god or societal laws, then no, it wouldn't matter what Jon's decision would be. Dany's actions could be ruled good or evil based on that external code. It's only with a moral philosophy where external code is irrelevant and personal moral choice rules that Jon's opinion is relevant. Tyrion is definitely pushing existentialism on Jon. Now next, Tyrion switches philosophical gears, and to really make sense of things, we need to assume that Jon feels it's his duty to follow Dany. That is, Jon is following deontology, morality derived from duty and obligation. Now, I'm not sure if Jon's past actions really support this, but Tyrion certainly thinks Jon is a dutiful individual.
You are the shield that guards the realms of men. You've always tried to do the right thing, no matter the cost.
So Tyrion then frames Dany as a consequentialist, or Machiavellian, essentially one who believes that the ends justify the means. According to Tyrion, Dany believes she has a destiny, a paradise end state, and that she will do anything to get there.
She believes her destiny is to build a better world for everyone. If you believed that, if you truly believed it, wouldn't you kill whoever stood between you and paradise?
Now, it should be noted that consequentialism and deontology are diametrically opposed. Consequentialism is focused on the end and not the method, while deontology is focused on the method and not the end. Killing baby Hitler is moral under consequentialism because you're saving millions of lives, but it's immoral under deontology because you're killing a baby who hasn't hurt anyone yet. Now, unfortunately, we get some dialogue crammed in that makes no sense. Tyrion says that he knows that Jon loves Dany, and then Jon says that love is the death of duty.
I know you love her. Love is more powerful than reason.
Love is the death of duty.
It's really a horribly placed line, as Jon loves Dany and is being dutiful by following her, so how is love killing duty? Love is strengthening duty. The line might work if we were talking about Jon's love for someone else, or for people in general, but we're specifically talking about Jon's love for Dany.
I know you love her.
I would call it the worst line of the episode, but we have the entire Great Council scene. Anyway, right after saying that duty is bad,
Sometimes duty is the death of love.
Tyrion then tries to use Jon's duty to the Night's Watch to justify killing Dany.
You are the shield that guards the realms of men. You've always tried to do the right thing, no matter the cost.
Now Tyrion is specifically throwing duty at a wall and hoping it sticks. But it's worth noting that doing what's right, the action, regardless of the cost, the result, is precisely what deontology is. Now, after the discussion of consequentialism versus deontology, Tyrion very briefly touches on utilitarianism.
You've tried to protect people. Who is the greatest threat to the people now?
But then switches to trying to appeal to Jon's selfishness, claiming that Jon's life is in peril.
Who is more dangerous than the rightful heir to the Iron Throne?
That doesn't work, and Jon reaffirms his allegiance to Dany.
If that's her decision, she is the queen.
And so Tyrion tries harder to appeal to Jon's selfishness by invoking Sansa and Arya.
And your sisters, do you see them bending the knee?
Now this is clearly Tyrion trying to use Jon's love for his sisters to kill his duty, and it's really the perfect place for the love is the death of duty conversation, but Whatever, the writers are a bunch of failures. Anyway, the conversation ends with Jon claiming that Sansa has no choice, and Tyrion says that Jon does, even though Jon already established that the choice was Dany's. So overall, it's a messy, poorly written conversation. However, we do see quite a few philosophical themes hit upon. We have an existentialist beginning. With God being dead, humans define their own essence and define their own morality. Then we go into a conversation of consequentialism versus deontology, Dany believing that the ends justify the means, and Jon doing what's right despite the cost. It's a very messy discussion, but the subject matter is there. We briefly touch on utilitarianism before going into selfish desire. Now, the Jon and Tyrion conversation doesn't actually reach any conclusion on morality. It's a confusing jumble, and Jon leaves clearly confused on what's right and wrong. But perhaps that's the point. And so Jon then confronts Dany on morality, and we revisit our moral themes. Now, one of the major criticisms of human-based morality is that it's subjective. With the right reasoning, people can really justify any behavior. Yes, under existentialism, people define their own essence, but it's through their own perception, so people tend to frame themselves in a positive light. And Dany appears to succeed on this front in this scene. Jon confronts Dany about burning King's Landing and executing prisoners, and Dany has justification.
I tried to make peace with Cersei. She used their innocence as a weapon against me. She thought it would cripple me.
Now, to be honest, Dany's justification for burning King's Landing is pretty piss poor, but Jon appears to accept it and has no good response. And then we see the return of consequentialism versus deontology. Jon wants to act merciful now, but Dany argues that mercy to her enemies now hinders her end goal of a good, merciful world down the road.
You can forgive all of them. Make them see they made a mistake. Make them understand.
We can't hide behind small mercies. The world we need won't be built by men loyal to the world we have.
The world we need is a world of mercy. It has to be.
And it will be.
Jon is once again stumped on what moral system would be better, and without knowledge of the future, it's impossible to judge which way is better in a utilitarian sense. We seem to be nowhere on morality until Jon's final questions.
How do you know it'll be good?
And as we see, Dany has no good answer on where morality comes from. She just knows.
Because I know what is good.
And then we get the kicker, the thing that kills Dany.
What about everyone else? All the other people who think they know what's good.
They don't get to choose.
Now, I will grant, as bad as this episode is, this line is pretty interesting. Tyrion tried all sorts of moral angles to justify killing Dany, and none of them worked on Jon. And then Dany sinks herself. You see, there are plenty of different human-based systems of morality, but nearly all of them agree that the freedom of choice is of utmost importance. Deontologists would say it's the basis of reason that allows one to judge their dutiful action over desire. Consequentialists and utilitarians would say that it's the happy end state for people that actions lead to. And existentialists would say it's the fundamental aspect of humanity that allows us to shape our destiny. Even selfish people have other individuals they care about who they would want to give freedom of choice to. And this all isn't really surprising. If human-based morality is subjective, it requires subjectivity. It cannot exist without many people having the ability to choose. Essentially, when Dany said she would deny the freedom of choice to people, she became objectively immoral to all subjective moral systems. She was attempting to recreate objective morality, which in a sense was just recreating the religion that had been previously destroyed. Jon may have not been able to choose what moral system was best, but he at least knew that choice was an essential part of the process. And so Jon kills Dany. And again, he does it for not any of the reasons that Tyrion gives. No, Jon doesn't kill Dany because she's insane, or a murderer, or merciless, or a threat to him and his family. No, Jon kills Dany because he feels that human minds need to be free. On a side note, when moral philosophers talk about freedom, it's not a do anything you want libertarian freedom, but rather a personal growth with responsibility towards society freedom. Anyway, it's after the death of Dany that Drogon destroys the Iron Throne. It's a melting down of a symbol of monarchy that any 8th grader can recognize, but it's also a destruction of both religion and objective morality. That is, taking down an institution that relies on divine right for legitimacy and a system that relies on the people not having a choice in the laws and governance of their society. Which brings us to the dreaded Great Council scene. Now, I have to say, I hate this scene with all of my heart. It's my least favorite scene in all of Game of Thrones. It makes less sense than even the White Hunt, and at least in that situation, humans acted somewhat rationally. Oh, but not here. For some reason, Grey Worm, who holds all of the power in the world and who has been emotionally pushed to the limit after seeing the only 2 people he cared about killed, lets Jon and Tyrion, the men who conspired and killed Dany, live, and then cedes all his power to Tyrion and a council of Jon's best friends. It's trash. It's absolute unforgivable trash. But I have to bring up this scene because Tyrion first claims that some outsider has no business determining the fate of Westerosi.
But it's not for you to decide.
The Westerosi should morally choose their own justice.
This fate is for our king to decide.
Now, of course, realistically, Grey Worm should have done this to Tyrion. But, whatever. But it's notable in that Tyrion is claiming that justice is subjective. If justice came from religion or a universally accepted legal document, then it wouldn't matter if Grey Worm delivered it or not. It only matters if we accept that subjective choice is relevant. And then Tyrion thinks that Westerosi should choose their own leader democratically.
You're the most powerful people in Westeros. Choose one.
Oh, it's not popular democracy, it's not even Jeffersonian democracy, but it's at least an aristocratic democracy. It's kind of a right step in the direction of moral choice. Now, of course, it's rather remarkable that both Jon and Tyrion independently came to the conclusion that choice was the way to go, not to mention everyone on the council thinking it was a good idea, and Sansa remaining as a monarch kind of ruins everything thematically. But for the most part, it seems that this final episode is about humanity after rejecting objective morality derived from religion and monarchy, must choose morality for itself. Now, you may be thinking, come on, you're imagining all of this. This episode was horrible and the showrunners are idiots. Were they really thinking about moral philosophy? And I would say, well, no, probably not. But I do have reason to think that George R.R. Martin was. You see, there is one scene, and one scene only in this episode, that actually is pretty good, and it's Brienne transcribing Jaime's life into the White Book. I mean, if we ignore the drying ink goof. Now, this scene is a clear bookend to 2 chapters in A Storm of Swords, Jaime 8 and Jaime 9, where Jaime has an existential crisis after reading his paltry White Book entry and decides he needs to do more with his life. When he was done, more than 3/4 of his page still remained to be filled between the gold lion on the crimson shield on top and the blank white shield at the bottom. Sir Gerald Hightower had begun his history, and Sir Barristan Selmy had continued it. But the rest, Jaime Lannister would need to write for himself. He could write whatever he chose henceforth. Whatever he chose. Now, this scene was somewhat adapted in a Game of Thrones Season 4, Episode 1.
Someone forgot to write down all your great deeds.
There's still time.
Is there? For a 40-year-old knight with one hand? How can you protect me with that?
I use my left hand now, Your Grace. Makes for more of a contest.
The problem is we don't know Jaime's inner monologue, and so the scene comes off more as foreshadowing of Jaime's inability to protect his son, rather than a crisis for Jaime. But this is certainly not the case for the novels, where Jaime and the White Book play as the philosophy of existentialism. Jaime has the freedom of choice to write his own White Book entry, meaning he has the freedom to define his own life, essence, and destiny. And with the Brienne scene, we see that Jaime succeeded. Brienne fills pages with Jaime's great deeds. taking River Run without the loss of life, sacrificing his childhood home, outwitting Targaryen forces, fighting for the living, dying for his queen. A life of intelligence, self-sacrifice, bravery, caring for others, and love. It's everything that Jaime wanted out of his life, and fitting closure to Jaime's existential crisis from A Storm of Swords. And so I do think George R.R. Martin was thinking about moral philosophy, specifically existentialism, when writing A Song of Ice and Fire, and when he mapped out the plot points of his story. It's just that it was later executed by our showrunners nonsensically. Nonetheless, the remnants of the whole choice moral philosophy story does seem apparent in the finale. Now, don't get me wrong, this all doesn't improve the finale at all, and I'm not even saying the remaining unwritten novels will be good, or will even exist. I'm just saying that there seems to be a tad more method to this madness. Anyway, that's all I have to say on the matter. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.